Hello, everybody. This is Empowering Democracy. I'm your host, Joe Firestone. Our topic for today is fascism, and Wall Street. This is my first stream for today. In the show, we'll be talking about the interrelations of, first, of neoliberalism and fascism and Wall Street, and finally, democracy. So a lot of important topics to be talked about. I'm going to work with a pretty good article. To help us get to these issues. This article is from Common Dreams. It's called "We Can't Stop Authoritarianism Without Taking on Wall Street." The tagline is, "There's a very large and powerful movement to be built if we're willing to take on corporate bosses and the financial sector." The author of this is Les Leopold, whose work we've covered on a number of occasions on this stream. This piece was written on February 20th, 2024, or at least it was published on Common Dreams, on that particular date. Les starts off by saying, today, thousands of activists are working hard to protect voting rights, halt undemocratic gerrymandering. I think all gerrymandering is undemocratic, and defend women's and LGBTQ plus rights. But those valiant and critically important efforts are not likely on their own to stop the rise of authoritarianism. To have any chance of success, we also have to address fundamental economic issues that plague the working class and bring them into the fight for democracy. And that requires doing all we can to halt Wall Street's mass slaughter of jobs. So why aren't more progressives bringing mass layoffs into their agendas? So here Les is saying that there's a relationship between Wall Street interests, also mass layoffs, and democracy. Let's explore that a little further. One possible reason is that the leaders of major community organizations, as well as the Democratic Party, have become too financially dependent on the super rich. So there it is, the idea that the Democratic Party has been bought by the super rich. As the executive director of a 501c3 organization says, Les, for the past 40 years, I am all too familiar with the perils of raising money from philanthropic foundations. In many cases, they avoid working class issues for fear of upsetting their wealthy donors and board members. In other words, the philanthropic foundations, tax exempt charities, are fearful of upsetting their wealthy donors and board members. They are bought too, as well as the Congress people. We should also be wary of the shallow democratic commitments of financial elites. As history has shown us again and again, they find ways to make their peace with authoritarians. Jamie Dimon, president of J.P. Morgan Chase, and supposedly a Democrat, has already made that clear by strategically praising Trump without any mention of Trump's obvious threats to democracy. The primary goal of financial elites is to make money, not democracy. What does fighting against mass layoffs have to do with fighting against authoritarianism? I guess I want to establish here a number of connections. First, the dominant economic philosophy of modern times is the philosophy of neoliberalism. It is the idea that profits are more important, than people. It is that idea that motivates Wall Street, that lies behind the things that Wall Street likes to approve, and likes to reward, and that also lies behind the mass layoffs. So there's a connection between the idea of neoliberalism, the behavior of Wall Street, and mass layoffs. The barons of Wall Street have absolutely no desire to help working people achieve what they need most: job stability. And if democracy can't deliver something close to that, we are in serious trouble. And Les goes on, defending democracy becomes a secondary concern to those losing their jobs. It's not so much that the victims of mass layoffs will flock to authoritarians with great enthusiasm, although they might if a strong man finds a way to protect their jobs. When Trump intervened to save jobs at the Carrier Air Conditioning Company in 2017, polling showed it was widely popular. And by the way, when Biden intervened to shut down the railroad strike in 2023, polling showed that that was widely unpopular. It's more likely that many working people will not get very worked up about the loss of certain voting rights when they see politicians of both parties do little or nothing to protect their livelihoods. You should have said simply their jobs. Why vote when your vote can't save you from economic catastrophe not of your own making? As my book, Wall Street's War on Workers, available starting today, shows, when he says my book, that is Les Leopold talking about his book, Wall Street's War on Workers. If there is working class attraction to the strong man, that attraction is connected to mass layoffs. Contrary to media portrayals, the attraction has little to do with growing resentment against those who are different. Two key findings of my book show how the working class can be brought into an anti-authoritarian movement. Mass layoffs are the most salient economic issue facing the working class. I would argue it's a big issue for the middle class also, and could unite working people of all shades and political inclinations. Number two, says Les, the white working class is growing more liberal, not illiberal, on key social issues concerning race, gender, immigration, and LGBTQ plus rights. Mass layoffs are ubiquitous. We estimate that more than 30 million workers have gone through a mass layoff since 1996, defined as 50 or more workers let go at one time for at least 1 month. If we add in the family members, more than half of all working people have experienced the harmful effects of mass layoffs. Mass layoffs are gut-wrenching experiences that can debilitate individuals, families, and communities. If you or a family has gone through one, This requires little explanation. Not only do such layoffs cause financial difficulties, but they negatively affect health and well-being. They sure do psychologically devastate a person victimized by one. For example, I added that to the article. For example, research shows that losing your jobs is the seventh most stressful life event, ranking more stressful than divorce, a sudden and serious impairment of hearing or vision, or the death of a close friend. Little wonder then that Department of Labor recognizes that, quote, being laid off from your job is one of the most traumatic events you can experience in life. I can tell you from personal experience that is certainly true. And it's not just industrial workers who have suffered these traumatic events. Workers in tech companies are also taking the hit. As I said before, the middle class is also subject to this. More than 260,000 lost their jobs in 2023, and another 41,700 so far in 2024. As my book shows, to stop mass layoff requires ending Wall Street's ability to conduct leverage buyouts and stock buybacks, something that neither political party has had the guts to do. These financial maneuvers kill jobs even during good times and do nothing to improve the economy. So, as Leopold says here, we've got to stop the mass layoffs. And to do that, we've got to get rid of the leverage buyouts and the buybacks of stock. I agree with that. I think that's important. But I also think it's very important that you have a safety net for layoffs, whether they're mass layoffs or not mass layoffs. And the safety net for layoffs is a program called the Federal Job Guarantee at a living, socially inclusive wage. So I would add to getting rid of leverage buyouts and buybacks of stock, having a federal job guarantee. Okay. Because both political parties are so hungry for Wall Street cash and future lucrative jobs when politicians leave office. The economic terrain is wide open for a political working class movement that fights against mass layoffs, curtails leverage buyouts, and ends buybacks of stock, which were essentially illegal until 1982. And again, I would add, we need a successful movement for a job guarantee program. Aren't mass layoffs inevitable? Les asks. The most difficult challenge, perhaps, will be changing our ingrained sense that mass layoffs are an inevitable feature of a modern economy. Mass layoffs are not inevitable. They're not due to unstoppable forces unleashed by new technologies, globalization, or even artificial intelligence, AI. Rather, they are the result of actual human-made deregulatory policies enacted during the past 4 decades, policies which gave Wall Street the green light to destroy jobs at will. And I have to add here, those policies also made it very hard to develop a safety net with a federal job guarantee behind it. There used to be people in the 1970s who advocated for the federal government being the employer of last resort. Yes, all the way back to the 1970s and before. And for a while during the 1970s, that kind of advocacy was popular. But when Wall Street became dominant and neoliberalism became dominant during the 1980s, that kind of advocacy went out of the window too. And so did uh, uh, the idea, okay, of regulation that accompanied actual human-made deregulatory policies. Of course, there are many other important working class issues, including wages, health care, and retirement benefits. But job stability is paramount, okay, to every worker. But it would be less paramount to every worker if there was a federal job guarantee program at a federally inclusive living wage that varied across the United States in line with the different cost of living in every major geographical area, okay, of the United States. If the federal job guarantee wage was adjusted for cost of living adjustments, okay, in each area, and if that wage were a socially inclusive living wage, then when you lost your job, it would be a much less momentous event, even if you were middle class, even if you were part of the tech arena, because if you knew you had a wage that would pay the bills, there are all kinds of things you could do with that particular time off or with getting into a new job that was part of the job guarantee program that was delivering value to your local community. Les says, but job stability is paramount to every worker. A progressive movement must place job security at the center of its demands, which is precisely what labor unions are doing right now. But hasn't the white working class become authoritarian when it comes to key social issues? No. Another challenge is moderating our ingrained negative stereotypes about the alleged racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic white working class in Wall Street's war on workers. We review the answers provided by white working class voters to 23 divisive social issues from thousands of voter survey results. Here's a sample of what we found. Should gay or lesbian couples be legally permitted to adopt children? In 2000, 36.2% of the people agreed with this. In 2020, 76.0% agreed. Do you believe that sexual relations between adults of the same sex is always wrong? In 1996, 59.8% agreed. In 2021, 29.3% agreed. So real variations over time, with the working class getting far more, let's call them socially lefty. Are you in favor of granting legal status to illegal immigrants who have held jobs and paid taxes for at least 3 years and not been convicted of any felony crimes? In 2010, 32.1% agreed. In 2020, 61.8% agreed. Do you agree that most blacks just don't have the motivation or willpower to pull themselves up out of poverty? In 1996, 56.8% agreed. Wow. In 2021, only 32.8% agreed. Wait, what about all those white working class Trump voters? To be sure, about 1/3 of the white working class supports liberal positions, and many of them support Trump. But our research shows there's very little attitudinal difference between white workers and white professionals on these issues. Also, contrary to popular portrayals, it's not at all clear that the white working class forms the hardcore of the MAGA movement. In our book, we show members of the Tea Party, for example, were disproportionately upper middle class, not working class. The January 6th insurrectionists who have been arrested are disproportionately white-collar and business owners. Republican Party primary voters are wealthier and better educated than the average voter. Democratic Party pollster Mike Lux agrees with our finding that economics, not the cultural wars, is what is motivating working class voters. Based on the evidence I've seen, these voters wouldn't care all that much about the cultural difference in the woke thing if they thought Democrats gave more of a damn about the economic challenges they face deeply and daily. There's a very large and powerful movement to be built, says Les, if we are willing to take on Wall Street. This requires building a multi-ethnic working class crusade with a focus on curtailing Wall Street's greed as well as supporting democratic rights. Our research strongly suggests there's no reason for a working class movement to avoid discussions and debates on difficult social issues while tackling mass layoffs. Certainly there will be disagreements, but our data suggests the vast majority of working people are united in their desire for stable jobs, fairness, and freedom from all forms of discrimination. And the need for mass education. Wall Street's war on workers is part of our contribution to building an educational infrastructure, that's his book, to assist progressive movement, but building. For the tool to be useful, however, it needs to travel widely. Please read the book, review it wherever you can, and help get the message out. All proceeds go to the Labor Institute's Political Economy for Workers educational projects. Thank you for your support and the good work you are doing to make our world a better place. So, one thing that's a problem with this article is that, of course, it doesn't mention or recognize the vital importance of a federal job guarantee program to strengthen the safety net, for workers. But the other weakness in it is the same weakness that we see in so many other exhortatory articles about the policies we need. Specifically, how are you going to get those policies through Congress when you, that is to say Les Leopold, and everybody else agrees that the Congress is bought? Les also thinks the foundations and the think tanks, are bought. So when these very important institutions are bought, and especially the Congress and the presidency and the judiciary, as we've been finding out, when they're all bought, then what do you need to do to stop the mass layoffs, to cushion layoffs when they occur? What do you need to do to end the threat, to democracy from not just workers, but all sorts of people victimized by the system who are convinced the conventional political parties are doing nothing for them and who therefore find attractive not simply figures that are authoritarian, but the figures who seek to establish a dictatorship, figures who are fascist, figures who have transformed their political parties into fascist political parties, which obviously we have the Republican Party today. How do we fight against the neoliberalism that underlies all this? And you know my answer to that question. My answer to that question is get rid of the money in politics. That is job one. You don't get to stop the leverage buyouts. You don't get to stop the buybacks of stock. You don't get to stop the mass layoffs. You don't get to stymie Wall Street unless you can clean out the Congress of those who are taking big money, which, by the way, is virtually every single congressman. If you consider that most of the support for Congress people comes from contributions of $200 and more to political campaigns, once you realize that, then you realize It's big money supporting everybody in Congress. All the Congress people are taking that big money, and therefore you need to clean house in Congress through the dump the corruption movement. And so I see no better way to end this stream than to once again share the rule for voting that is at the heart of the dump the corruption movement. So let me present that and share it. And once again, say what that is. There it is. Too many tabs open as usual. The rule: vote against every candidate except those who won't take money from wealthy corporations, from wealthy individuals, PACs, or party committees, and who repudiate all super PAC support. This rule is functionally equivalent to a law that says no contributions over $200 from any source, and super PACs are now illegal. If everybody votes according to this rule, that would be the functional equivalent of having that kind of law. That's how important following this rule is for every voter. So, I'm going to take a brief look at any comments you may have. Steve Wolbrand is here. Hello, Steve. Thank you very much for coming. I'm afraid you didn't get to see very much of the stream, but of course, the video is always there. The streams coming up for tonight at 8 and 8:30 are both on Julian Assange. So I know you'll want to be here for those particular streams. Thanks for coming to this one, Steve. And on that note, I think I'm going to say good afternoon for now. And again, hopefully I'll see you this evening at 8 and at 8:30, and also on D's show at 9 p.m.